I'm going to kick off things tonight by introducing our first reader of the evening, and that is Sydney Hinton. Um, you'd think after 15 years, I'd be used to doing these introductions for graduating students, but frankly, it doesn't really get any easier. Um, I'm going to miss Sydney a great deal. I'm going to miss her good humor, her hard work, her occasional and totally appropriate dropping of F bombs. Sydney has been part of a group of students in the program who genuinely care and look out for each other in ways that I find really heartwarming. Honestly, I think we need more of such kindness and support in the world, and it's really been a privilege for me to teach Sydney and teach them and watch her writing grow. Sydney, above all and beyond, has contributed to the classroom and the writing. Above all, she's contributed to the writing and classroom community. Has been a guiding force behind our literary magazine, The Normal School, ever since she arrived 3 years ago. I think of her really more as a collaborator and a colleague, and I have no doubt that she's going to have a career in literary publishing ahead of her. Um, like me, Sydney is from the great and amorphous and mysterious region of America known as the Midwest. The land of nostalgia where our grandmothers made their own clothes and our cousins sang in the church and our aunts played in the bell choir. And just in case you think I'm exaggerating, Sydney once gave me several jars of homemade jam that her grandfather made and mailed to her. I ate all of it. And in Sydney's work, beneath the jam jars, casseroles, smiles, and beauty pageants, there's something in her writing that I think of as Midwestern Gothic. The Midwest is the kind of place where pain, insecurity, and loss is buried beneath banal small talk and homemade Afghan blankets, where criticisms are wrapped in passive aggressive side comments, withering looks, or sometimes more subtle missiles. But the Midwest is also a place where beauty exists in small moments of kindness or grace, where the veneer of politeness is both a veneer and something more substantial, something real. And at least part of what Sydney is doing is peeling back the veneer of her Midwestern upbringing and confronting truths about herself and the world that I not only recognize, but find equally humorous, heartbreaking, and inspiring. This is the hard work of a writer, of an essayist. Nonfiction is a bit like spelunking into your past, and Sydney charges into those darkened caves with a delightful kind of reckless abandon. She brings with her a suitcase filled with odd facts, books, movies, and music, lots of music, and what we as readers see is an expansive, curious mind at work, a collector and curator of meaning. Whether it's grappling with a ghost self or confronting body image and representation of plus size women in pop culture, Sydney writes with a fearlessness that is inspiring. She has a seemingly uncanny and innate ability to capture small moments, to take a simple exchange and imbue it with layers of meaning. Take this short section from her thesis, where she's retelling a family story about shopping for a dress. I've heard this story so many times. I can see it like I was there. Grandma makes an appointment for the former warehouse of Saks Fifth Avenue, and they create a signaling system as they hunt on opposite sides of the room. Hold up a dress, the other reacts with either a thumbs up or with a puking finger in the mouth. If approved, Grandma rubs her pointer and middle finger against her thumb to ask the price. Mom holds up fingers, indicating how many hundreds. Then they find it. A white Fortuny pleated charmeuse gown with dainty short sleeves. Mom holds it up and Grandma lights up with her how much signal. Mom wiggles 4 fingers. Grandma tells her with her eyes to get her ass to the dressing room. Isn't that just wonderful? I've told Sydney so many times how much I love that scene, but I can see it like I was there too. So please join me in welcoming Sydney Hinton.
Thank you, Stephen. Wow, I'm more nervous than I thought I'd be. So yeah, hi. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was so frustrated I wouldn't get the opportunity to give this reading in front of a live audience, among so many other frustrating things about the world we live in right now. However, tonight I'm thankful for the opportunity Zoom has to offer my family from Illinois. Wow, we are 2 sentences in. My best friends from childhood and undergrad can join me here tonight. If there's any silver lining in these weird times, it's Zoom and the ability to wear slippers and you wouldn't know. I want to congratulate Carolina and thank her for sharing this night with me as well. It's been such a privilege to work with you over the past several years in the normal school, and I value everything I've learned from you. My first encounter with this program after I accepted my place here was Stephen Church telling me I would love Fresno because it's just like the Midwest of California. I was immediately filled with dread since I chose California to get away from the Midwest. Little did I know that that would be one of the best decisions I've ever made. Here, I grew into the writer and woman I am today. Wow. And I've learned to love and appreciate home more now than I ever have in the past. So thank you, Stephen, for scaring the shit out of me initially, but for also being my thesis chair and for your mentoring, encouragement, and wisdom. Thank you to Dr. John Hales and Bryn Saito for being my other readers on my committee and for your support with my writing. John, thank you for always holding our writing like little piles of gold. Wow. And encouraging us to give you more. Bryn, thank you for your conversations about books that have influenced my writing and for your steady grace with us. Thank you to my committee for taking my chaos head on and helping me turn it into something I'm endlessly proud of. Glad I have a script, goodness. Thank you to my parents, sisters, grandpas, aunts, uncles, my best friends, and my new California family for your love and boundless support. Thank you for being my loving, inquisitive, and ever-present sounding board for my spiraling ideas and half-baked thoughts. Thank you for holding the red ball of yarn while I make connections between topics, for letting me climb upon my numerous soapboxes and yell into a less lonely void, for pushing me to dig deeper into the scary emotions, for getting me through, for loving me through all the difficulties we find. Thank you for the occasional imposter syndrome squelching reminder that I'm a capable badass. I wouldn't be where I am without all of you. Thank you to my peers and the normals for allowing me to learn with you and from you. Thank you to Jefferson and Ronald for their faith in us as students. Additionally, thank you to Ceci and Jefferson for running the Zoom room tonight. I'd like to dedicate this reading to my grandma. I know she'd be proud, swearing and all. My thesis is not what I originally planned writing about when I entered the program 3 years ago. But through the growth and the exploration encouraged by all my professors, I found this culmination of topics revolving around body image and marginalization, feminism and mental health, dieting, dating, and more. The piece I will be reading excerpts from comes from the beginning of my thesis and lays the groundwork for the rest of the book. The full essay is also forthcoming in Under the Sun Literary Magazine. And this is The Immaculate Illusion. My former body is a ghost. I don't have ballet mirrors all around me to see what my body looks like in all positions throughout the day. I have this wispy image of how I think I look. My ghost is dainty, curvy, and fills out her jeans, but not too much to spill over the top. I went on a hike with my friends in California and felt my lungs burn and squeeze to get as much oxygen as they could. I felt like I was internally on fire while my friends climbed on ahead of me with ease. Breathing through my nose and out my mouth wasn't helping like it normally did to calm me down. I tried to rationalize all the distant wildfire smoke, making it harder on top of the elevation. Around the halfway point of the hike, I felt my vision go a little blurry. I could feel my body dip in and out of a hot and cold sweat. At one point, I thought I saw stars in my peripheral vision. I thought, what if I passed out and tumbled down the side of the cliff? What if one of the rocks or roots I grasped to pull myself along broke loose and caused me to spill down the mountain? What if they had to call an ambulance and they couldn't get to me due to where I landed? What if they couldn't lift me onto the spinal board and out of the valley where I tumbled? What if they had to call my parents from Illinois and explain what happened and that I didn't allow my body a break that it screamed for so desperately? I thought how stupid and embarrassing it would be as I tried to hide the wheeze creeping into my throat. My ghost isn't rippled like the reflection of a pool, but she retains the warped, inaccurate image. Her arms are smooth, her shoulders narrow. Her hair is perfectly curled and never frizzes. She's the airbrushed, acceptable plus-size model with no stretch marks that companies use to seem diverse and progressive. She doesn't take up too much space. I put on one of my favorite records and listened to Mother Folk's croon lean into a passionate cry. The album begins with the soft, almost string-like sounds with a light keying of piano and some prolonged notes from guitars. The singers harmonize. I feel like I'm trying to kill a ghost, followed by a plucky bass. With every beat, I expect the music to take a turn for some minor chords, but I'm continually surprised by their eerie lyrics and upbeat melodies. In a split second, I finally hear the lyrics despite singing along to them for months. Because if I look too close, I start to lose focus and I pull myself together as best as I can. But underneath it all, I'm scared as hell of what comes after this. And if you look too close, I start to unravel. The stitches that hold me together don't matter. I feel like I've seen my ghost for the first time. She sits next to me at my record player and lets the next song bleed into the stagnant air. She places her dainty hand on my knee and she silently begs me to look her in the eye and see her. I ignore her and listen to the rest of the album that is filled with songs like the first, upbeat tempos, major chords, but deeply personal and haunting lyrics about mental illness and other family ghosts. I think about that hike occasionally. I think about hikes I want to take, but realize my body might not allow. I agree to finally stop when a friend with asthma needed it. I would not speak up for myself. I slipped off my sneakers and dipped my feet into the cool creek water around the rocks. The icy water shot through my larger body and jolted me awake as my knees knocked back and forth, trying to get more oxygen to their muscles. My ghost materialized and sat next to me on the rock on the far side of the creek where we stopped. She gently placed her hand on my knee as a reminder. I tried to ignore her, but she's always there whether I choose to see her or not. Instead of swatting her away like I always do, I let her rest with me. She looked at me with a tilted head and a furrowed brow, as if to tell me I wasn't the same as I was back then. I inhabited a different body now, one that was larger and required more breaks and more grace. I used to hate my ghost. Sometimes I think I still do. I hate all that she represents, what I once looked like, and that I don't look like her anymore. She quietly guides my attention to the areas that cannot match hers anymore. I loathe her presence alongside me and despise her stark contrast. She caresses my developing rolls and extended curves that amplify the stretching marks on my body. She reminds me of the Spanx I once wore to smooth out the imperfections. I remember feeling the shame and guilt of being the only preteen in the room with an extra garment to unlatch before going to the restroom. I hid it in the back of the closet and only reached for it as a last resort. I hate her for not changing with me. I see I'm larger than I ever thought I'd be. She only ever appeared in my mind or in mirrors, occasionally in glass storefronts, until recently. She stood in front of me now and I didn't recognize her. Her body, a fraction of mine, resembled someone I used to know in photos from high school. Back then, I thought it was so big and too much. Now I longed for that body again. In this wheezing, pained version of myself, I thought of having a eulogy for my former body. She was gone and wasn't coming back. In the Sandy Creek bed in California, I imagine all my loved ones gathering to eulogize my former body, the carefree body from childhood, the body without any perception of what it means to exist in a larger frame in this world, the body that had yet to understand that it didn't fit into the confines the world has set up. The guests appear as wispy apparitions and figments of my imagination matching my ghost. The flowers and trees are in full bloom. Petals and leaves float to gently land on the shimmering surface of the water as it swells along the trails. Birds are chirping and the sun shines through the leaves, creating nature's stained glass cathedral. There's a slight breeze surrounding the mourning guests as they all stand barefoot in the water with me. The day is warm and the guests soak up the soft scents of pollen and grass. Everyone prepares what I think they will say about my former body, but I prepare an elegy. The ghost swirled around them as they talk about how I used to climb all the tallest trees and screech at the top of my lungs, unafraid of anyone who would hear. Some guests began to speak. Sydney would swing upside down from branches, letting her shirt expose her belly without care or second thought. When she was a little older, she began ballet lessons. The ghost seemed to pirouette between the guests as she skimmed across the top of the swelling water. I was constantly surrounded by mirrors to check my posture and positions in ballet. Teachers would gently place their hands between my shoulder blades and push out to rectify my perpetually slumped shoulders. I noticed my small, round child's belly in the mirror when they told me to stand up straight. They told me to pretend like a string was pulling my hair bun to the ceiling. I watched the big girls perform routines and point and never thought my body would be able to do the things they could do. Other guests chimed in. Sydney joined the competitive swim team when she was a little older. My ghost stretched her arms across her body like I did before my practices and meets. My ghost looked like a curvy Olympian muse as she sprung off the rock and dove into the creek without so much as a splash. I swapped mirrors for the reflection of rippling water. Before diving in the pool, I always saw the reflection looking back at me that warped at my waist, hips, and thighs more than the other girls. At least here, bigger thighs were more welcome. I could hide in the water most of the time. On the pool deck, my coach constantly reminded me to tilt my head back, quit looking at my feet, and press my hips up to the surface of the water, all for a better streamline. I couldn't help but notice how my belly would stick out of the water, but other girls didn't. I'd further suck my belly button to my spine to help ensure the most streamlined possible, or that's what I told myself. Sydney was in the elite choir at her high school and won numerous awards and regional contests. My ghost stood in line with the guest as she straightened her posture and took a deep, inflating breath. However, her stomach never moved an inch. When I tired of laps, I fully commit to choir and theater. When I had to buy a dress for the traveling choir and gave the size I needed, my director gave me a quizzical look and said, "Really?" with a judgmental shrug. I never mentioned how I felt the seams tighten every time I took a deep breath from my diaphragm, or how I worried with one breath some drastic wardrobe malfunction would ensue. Eventually, Sydney became president of the drama club and was the lead in the musical 2 years in a row. The ghost gently floated down the creek as if to perform for all the guests. She sauntered down the line with precise, choreographed, flowing movements. In drama club, I worried about finding costumes in the right size rather than the right period. Some relief came when my grandma decided to costume the show and took it upon herself to create them from scratch for me. Grandma said it was because I was the lead, but I knew better. I felt loved while simultaneously hating the special accommodation. When I saw that Grandma had to pad her clothing mannequin with extra stuffing from a pillow to replicate my size better, I felt a flush of panic wash over me as I descended to her sewing room in the basement. Bumps prickled my skin as I tried to ignore how the naked mannequin looked without any kind of hourglass waist, and tried to focus on how perfect the costume would fit. The illusion was immaculate since the threads were made specifically to fit me. Silence grows at the creek, enveloping me, the guests, and my ghost. I want to trade bodies with the ghost, but she reminds me of my favorite concert shirts I keep in the back of my closet because I think I can fit them again one day, like some cheap prize for a hard-fought game I didn't want to play. I save them and reconcile to create something that's not a wearable article of clothing. But she sits in the corner and knows the truth. I hope to match her body again one day. I recognize her as someone who's similar to me, but she is not me. I want to bury her. I'm tired of seeing our differences. She reminds me of the uncanny valley theory, the hypothesized relationship between the extent to which a humanoid entity resembles an actual human being and the emotional response such an entity evokes. She is all the best fragments of me I once had. Parts of me want her back. Other parts of me just want her to disappear so I can move on. No matter how much I want to exist like her, when I move and watch myself move, I know she's just a phantom. Her graceful movements and presence don't align with my disjointed, clumsy actions. When I hold up a shirt to see if it will fit me, first I think of her. It would definitely fit her. I realize it won't work for me by the time it's too late and I see myself in the mirror. She stalks me. I don't notice she's present until I feel the pit in my stomach grow, expanding my already large frame. She can't speak, so she never uses the words the other kids did to taunt my body. She still gives me a pitied look when I think of those words more than I should. I don't realize I'm thinking of her. Moments like when I walk into a dressing room and I see we're not the same person. She stands behind me, hiding behind my now larger body, showing me what I've lost and gained. Lost the former image and gained the pounds of insecurity and self-hatred. Lost the childhood baby fat and gained the adulthood obesity. Lost the ability to do much of anything without thinking of my former body. My ghost holds the threads keeping this illusion together, and then suddenly and without warning, she pulls them and we watch my illusion crumble in the mirror before us. She forces me to see myself instead of her. The rest of the guests expressed their loving words and kind thoughts about my former body as they left the creek bed one by one. My ghost hovered behind me, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. She knelt behind me on the rock as if to support me somehow, while my feet dangled in the water. I watched the splashes and droplets fly as I kicked them across the creek to rid the last of the guests from my mind. Thank you.